Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So we will begin, as usual, by reading the verse that we're looking at. It is verse 8. Of course, we went at least halfway through the purport yesterday, so we're well into it now. But let's read the verse again anyway. So here we go. Tanama rupa charitadi sukirtana no smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya. Tishtan vraje tadanuragi jananugami kalam nayed akilam ityupadesha saram. They're very nice. Translation. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's mind and tongue. In this way, one should reside in Vraja, Goloka Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. Very good. So we left off last night. We left off in the third paragraph. We more or less finished, but we didn't actually really finish. So I'm going to carry on in the third paragraph by bringing out some they're very important things, and they're also very interesting things about this type of devotional service which is being discussed here. This devotional service in Vrindavan, worshipping the Lord in Vrindavan, following in the footsteps of his devotees from Vrindavan, and doing some Vrindavan-type service. This form of devotional service, which is called Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Okay, so we're in that, what now? We were in the third paragraph. We read the translation of the verse, which is talking about how one should place oneself under the direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna. Of course, for us, we can say certainly, this is Srila Prabhupada. But there's another sense to it also in the sense of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And we read yesterday, if you remember, the translation of the song by Narottam Das Thakur, Sri Rupa Manjari Pada. How extremely, deeply Narottam Das Thakur was worshipping and begging for the mercy of and revelation from Rupa Manjari. So, and we mentioned that actually his spiritual master was Lokanath Goswami, who's an associate of the six Goswamis, and not to be taken lightly at all. But it doesn't mean that now he's given up Lokanath Goswami, his initiating guru, and who he's been with for a long time, serving and learning from. And now he's given him up, and now he's with Rupa Manjari, and Lokanath Goswami is kind of out of the picture. It doesn't work like that at all. But the spiritual master, in his case Lokanath Goswami, is guiding the devotee through all of even these very high and by external standards, very esoteric aspects of Krishna consciousness. The practice, the remembrance of the pastimes and the Lord, the remembrance of that associate of the Lord in Vrindavan, and learning how to serve like that associate one is following. That is all going on internally. Yes, and whereas externally life is going on, as usual. Generally chanting one's rounds, etc. Life is going on. Right, so there's one important point, because here we're discussing Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. In the last, I think it's the last last paragraph, Last paragraph, yes. Prabhupada is quoting Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and who makes it very clear we are talking about Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So now, we mentioned yesterday, Raganuga. Rag means this deep attachment, overwhelming attachment, by which the devotee sees Krishna in terms of the rasa, as my friend, as my lover, as my child or nephew. You get the idea. Not as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's an interesting little passage I can mention. It's in the Bhagavatam, is it? It's in the Bhagavatam. It's in the Bhagavatam. Or actually, no. I think it's in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Uddhava, who went on behalf of Krishna to visit the Brijbasis, Uddhava is in Vrindavan with the Brijbasis, delivering messages from Krishna. And he's trying, the Brijbasis are just so overwhelmed in separation we cannot imagine. We really cannot imagine. And Uddhava is trying to encourage them in the sense that Krishna's everywhere. So he's here. He may have gone in a certain sense to Mathura, but he's still here. Because he's the Supreme Lord. He's everywhere. So he tries to convince the Brijbasis of this. And there's a particular passage in which he tries to convince Nanda Maharaj that because Krishna's God, he's everywhere. And therefore, you have not lost contact with him. No problem. There's no problem. You shouldn't be worrying. And Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's father, and so deeply loving of Krishna, just seeing him as his son, he says, look, what is this talk about him being God? He's everywhere. He's my son. He's my son. And he's gone. So, and we've lost him. So it goes back and forth a little between Uddhava and Nanda Maharaj. And eventually, Uddhava is trying to press this point that he's everywhere, he's still here. So you shouldn't be feeling so much that you've lost him. And Nanda Maharaj finally says, all right. I offer my love to your Lord Krishna. Your Lord Krishna. Not my Lord Krishna. He's your Lord Krishna, if you want to see him like that. But I offer my love to him. Yes. So anyway, here the idea is that someone is trying to anuga, follow someone who has rag, that deep attachment like Nanda Maharaj. Yeah. So now, what is the position of that person like Nanda Maharaj who has rag? What's he called? He's not Raganuga, because he's not trying to achieve rag by following someone who has rag. He has rag. He has that overwhelming, total, even in a sense bewildering, under Yoga Maya, sort of bewildering love for Krishna. He doesn't see him as God. And you try and tell him that Krishna is God, and he thinks, what are you talking about? So what's he called? Well, he is called Rag Atmik. Atmik. Atma, of course, means the self or one's being. Yes, so he has rag. He has rag in his being. He's just fully absorbed in rag. This is what rag atmik means. Someone who's full of rag. Whereas Raganuga, someone who wants to enter Vrindavan and devotional service in Vrindavan, is following a person like Nanda Maharaj or Rupa Manjari or whoever there, in order to get rag of the same sort that they already have. So in that regard, then, well, let me read a little passage from Nectar of Devotion, which I didn't send to Mahaprabhu Kripa, but he can do it. So Nectar of Devotion says, this is in chapter 16, persons desiring to follow in the footsteps of such eternal devotees as the Vrishnis and the Vrindavan residents are called Raganuga devotees, which means that they're trying to attain the perfection of those devotees. The Vrishnis, to some degree, that the residents of Dwaraka, but particularly the residents of Vrindavan. So, these Raganuga devotees do not follow the regulative principles of devotional service very strictly. Now, that does not mean that they don't follow all the four regulative principles. They don't chant their rounds. doesn't mean. But it means that they just naturally do these things. They don't have to think about it. But they may have a different approach in different ways to serving Krishna. And you know what comes to mind? Is when we, some days ago, a little while ago, we were talking about the 9 processes of devotional service. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam. So you may remember that discussion. One of the 9 is to become a friend of the Lord, to accept the Lord as your friend. And the description of, at least in Nectar of Devotion, where there's some, Nectar of Devotion, Srimad Bhagavatam, where there's elaboration on these 9. In the description about that befriending the Lord, it says that such a devotee may lie down in the temple. We do not lie down in the temple. But someone who's in Raganuga sadhana, his relationship with the Lord is very informal, full of feelings, spontaneous. With you, Krishna, you're my friend. And friends may lie down together. So to some degree, formalities of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti may not be there. Okay, there we were. But by spontaneous nature, they become attracted to some of the eternal devotees, such as Nanda or Yashoda, and they try to follow in their footsteps spontaneously. There is a gradual development of the ambition to become like a particular devotee, and this activity is called Raganuga. Anyway, you could look it up. It's there in chapter 16, Nectar of Devotion. So now, of course, well, this is part of sadhana bhakti. Means devotional service in practice. It's very close to perfection in that generally you'll know what your eternal relationship is. And so now you're trying to practice it and learn how to serve Krishna like that. But you haven't achieved perfection yet. You're still in the learning process, although it's, a very high part of the learning process. You could compare it to when students are studying in university and now they have their bachelor's degree, but they want to get a master's degree. Or maybe they have a master's degree, they want to get a doctorate, become, what do they call it? A candidate. Yeah. So, they're not fully qualified. They're still studying. But sometimes they are allowed to give lectures to the students, the younger students. Yeah. Even though they're still learning to some degree themselves. So, you could say there's some similarity there. That this devotee is very advanced, but still not perfect. So advanced that he or she is practicing internally a particular rasa with Krishna. Yeah, but externally conducting themselves as regular devotees. So in the stage of advancement, There are a number of particular characteristics, and one of them is extreme humility. Extreme with a capital E and humility with a capital H. Generally, as the devotees progress, they become more humble. So we have Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and Chaitanya Charitamrita saying, I am lower than a worm in stool. It is not true. It is far from true. But he feels like that in his humility because of his advancement. So we want to read to you some verses, actually from Rupa Goswami, in which he is in this type of mood, begging for mercy from Radha and Krishna to serve them directly in Vrindavan. Okay, let's read them. Mahaprabhu Kripa has translated them, right? Yeah. So try and listen very carefully. That it's very deep. It is very deep. It's even deeper. Well, it's no less deep than Sri Rupa Manjari Pada. It may be deeper. So please listen. A very poor man living in Vrindavan forest presents the following appeal at the lotus feet of Vrindavan's king and queen. O king, whose luster eclipses the splendor of newly blossomed blue lotus flowers. O queen, whose fair complexion devours the intense pride of yellow Gorochana. O king, whose splendid garments mock the beauty of golden Kadamba flowers. O queen, whose splendid garments eclipse the glory of red Kimshuka flowers. O king, who is the sapphire crown of all youths. O queen, who is the jasmine flower crown in the decorated braids of all the girls in Vraja. O king of Vrindavan, O queen of Vrindavan, bowing down before you with a choked voice, this foolish person appeals to you. Although I am not worthy to receive your mercy, please be merciful to me, for you are the crown jewels of all who are merciful. O king and queen, worshipped by the masters of all the worlds, they who are very merciful are filled with kindness even for the unworthy and even for the offenders. Although I have not the dimmest shadow of pure devotion, which is the only way to attain you, still, because you are the masters of playful transcendental pastimes, please be merciful to me. O my king and queen, in this world many powerful controllers and many playful persons are seen to be merciful to the impious and indifferent. Although I am the lowest and you are the highest, although I am a fool and you are the greatest philosophers, although I am wicked and you are the most saintly, and although I commit offences when I think of you, still, O king and queen, the shadow of whose holy names delivers one from a host of sins, please be kind to this person who sometimes chants your holy names. The most unpardonable sin is made non-existent by a small particle of devotion to you. This makes me hopeful. For this reason, I now appeal to you. Although this living entity is a cowardly eunuch, intense pain has now made him bold. O king and queen, again and again he appeals to you. Please be kind to him. O king and queen, who are kind to the shelterless, Please be kind to this person and grant the direct service he begs. Folded palms placed on his head, this poor person begs, may my desire now be fulfilled. When, coming through the forest, will your splendid fragrance overwhelm my nose with immeasurable happiness? When will the musical tinkling of your anklets, which shames the swan's warbling, delight my ears? When, seeing in Vrindavan forest your footprints bearing a chariot wheel and other auspicious signs, will this person become mad with joy? These are a few, okay? You didn't reach the end? Which number? Adna Minuta. Which number are you up to? You don't have the numbers. Okay. Okay, well, we continue. I don't know what else to do. Right, okay, so there you have Rupa Goswami, his extreme humility in desiring to enter the pastimes in Vrindavan and in desiring to serve, to serve Radha and Krishna directly in Vrindavan. Now, I want to take it a step further. By reading, not so much as we just read now, but reading a few verses from a book called Vilap Kusumanjali, which is by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. A few verses from there, in which Raghunath Das Goswami is placing himself in the position of being a devotee who has not yet entered the pastimes, who has not yet directly entered into the service of Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan, but is more like learning. In other words, he's putting himself in the position of a Raganuga devotee and expressing the feelings that I want to serve you in my eternal position. Raghunath Das Goswami in Vrindavan is one of the Manjaris. Here with Lord Chaitanya, he's Raghunath Das Goswami, he's a man, he's an adult. In Vrindavan, he's a young Gopi, he's a young girl, like 5, 6 years old, 7, at the most 8 years old, like that. So he is expressing himself as if he has more or less just understood that, my relationship is like this. As a young Gopi, that's what my relationship is. And I really want to enter that relationship. So he's praying to Radharani, so please allow me to enter into that relationship. So, Okay. So, let's see. So he expressed, I'll just read one of the verses in which he refers to his position as a sadhaka, someone who, in a male body, is practicing devotional service. Just one. It's the second one I sent you, Mahaprabhu Kripa, the second one. I was unwilling to drink the nectar of devotional service, possessed of renunciation, but Sanatan Goswami, out of his causeless mercy, made me drink, even though I was otherwise unable to do so. Therefore he's an ocean of mercy. He's very much compassionate to fallen souls like me, and thus it is my duty to offer my respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. Now, the next verse, just to prepare you, in the next verse, he is addressing Radharani in the position of a gopi. It's a little extraordinary. And he switches from gopi to man to gopi in these verses a couple of times. So listen to this. O Queen, a certain maidservant, overwhelmed with love, and her heart always burning in the great fire of separation, laments in the following verses. So it's a type of lament, not exact, well, anyway, something. It's sort of a desperate appeal for mercy. That's really what it is. It's a desperate appeal for mercy from Radharani. Mercy from Radharani. But the appeal is from Raghunath Das Goswami, but in his position as a gopi, which he has not fully entered. But he wants to enter, and he wants to serve Radharani intimately. So, in the next verse, he switches back to a male position. O Queen, please rescue this unfortunate person, drowning in an ocean of pain. Place him on the strong boat of your mercy, and carry him to the wonderful realm of your lotus feet. Him. He's referring to himself. In other words, please let me enter Goloka Vrindavan to be with you. So let's continue. Just a few more verses. O Queen, with the medicine of the red lac from your lotus feet, please bring back to life this person now dead from the bites of the black snake of not seeing you. O Queen, with the nectar of a moment's glance, please restore the life of this gopi maid servant of your lotus feet, who now burns in the great forest fire of separation from you. So now the mood changes, and Raghunath Das Goswami is appealing to Radharani for specific services in Goloka. O Queen, with the nectar of a moment's glance, please restore the life of this gopi maid servant. Oops, I read that. O beautiful faced one, when even in a dream will I, by decorating my head with the splendid perfumed powder of your lotus feet, attain the goal of my life. O Queen, with the two bumblebees of the corners of your eyes, which in the moonlit rendezvous anxiously wander over each direction, as if the forest were a jungle of blue lotuses. will you glance upon this person? Blue lotuses, men's Krishna. O Queen of Vrindavan, since Rupa Manjari filled my eyes with light in the land of Vraja, I have yearned to see the red lac decorating your lotus feet. Okay, so again, Rupa Manjari, because generally speaking, for all our acharyas, and even for so many of us in due course, whenever due course will be, at least those who will enter into the conjugal rasa, we will do so through Rupa Manjari. Yeah. So Narottam Das Thakur did, and here Raghunath Das Goswami feels he's got shelter of this type through Rupa Manjari. So they're nice verses, aren't they? I think they're very nice. I think they're almost too nice. Yeah. We don't want to take them cheaply and imagine we're on that sort of position. I'll just read one last verse. It comes towards the end, almost at the end. And it's one of the great classic verses of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Raghunath Das, as a Manjari, or sort of trainee, becoming a Manjari, prays to Srimati Radharani. It's like almost I think it's the last actual sort of prayer, and then he goes on to explain a few things in a few following verses before the book finishes. So I'm going to read the Sanskrit. It's very nice. Tavai vasmi, najivami tvayavina. Iti vigyaya devi tvam, naya mam charanantikam. I'm yours. I cannot live without you. O Queen, please understand this and bring me to your feet. So the Rupa Goswami from the other reading we did a few minutes ago, that was just showing the humility which is there, plus some desire for that sort of service. But this is more directly going into that sort of service. So now we devotees, we have 2 more paragraphs left. Anyway, well, let's just carry on. Now, what it is, the rest, from paragraph 4, which starts, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented as follows upon this very verse. The rest of the purport is simply verbatim Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's words. So in paragraph 4, which starts Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, again Prabhupada via Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is emphasizing training. Give up material motives. Train your mind by following regulative principles, namely chanting and remembering Krishna and his name, form, qualities, and pastimes. Develop a taste for these things, and when you've got that, then live in Vrindavan. And always remember Krishna in Vrindavan, and do so under the direction and protection of an expert devotee in Vrindavan. You know, Prabhupada is our expert, but he's also indicating here some resident of Vrindavan in their capacity as resident of Vrindavan. Prabhupada is also a resident of Vrindavan, but we know him not exactly in his capacity as a resident of Vrindavan. For example, generally our acharyas are in the conjugal rasa. So Prabhupada, the capacity he was here with us in was definitely, outwardly was definitely not that. It was of a very strict and incredibly empowered devotee who we could relate to and follow in the footsteps of. So just like with Narottam Das, when we read the translation of that song yesterday, his guru is Lokanath, and he is not being minimized at all. In fact, sometimes the spiritual master like Lokanath for Narottam takes that role of manifesting his eternal relationship with Krishna, which he's already in, and then training the disciple in that. So, it's a pretty elevated subject, and maybe not so easy to digest. So then, in the next paragraph, it's a very esoteric paragraph, actually. It's just super esoteric. In this paragraph, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is mentioning a whole series. It's a sequence of how many is it? I think it's 6. It's 6. Different practices on different levels for cultivating remembrance. It's all about the mind. How are we going to remember the Lord? Until you reach Samadhi. And then even beyond Samadhi, when you enter your eternal relationship. So let's just very briefly touch on them, because this is something we do not specifically do. Please note that. Don't now start thinking, well, I'm going to do these things. Doesn't work like that. It's just like I said yesterday, a lot of this is just for information's sake, and maybe for the sake of inspiration in regard to some points. Okay, so in sadhana, which is connected with Raganuga sadhana, then a particular practice for cultivation of remembrance. First one is called Shravana Dash, which just involves hearing about hearing the holy name of Krishna, remembering his form, qualities, and pastimes. Then you go on to Varana Dash. So, through doing the just immediately previously mentioned things, you become attached to hearing Krishna Katha. Then the next stage is Smarana Vasta. Now on that level, having become attached to hearing about Krishna, now you can remember. Reached, and he says, reached when one is able to chant in ecstasy. It doesn't just mean our sort of Haribol ecstasy. That's nice. We're not trying to minimize it, but it's an ecstasy beyond that, an ecstasy approaching love of God. So that was remembrance, yeah. So at first it may be interrupted, but as you progress through that stage, it becomes uninterrupted. Then next stage, fourth stage, is Anusmiriti. Remembrance is already uninterrupted. Now it just becomes concentrated. Yeah. Like we mentioned sugar candy the other day. You get sugar It's already sweet, but you cook it further and it becomes really concentrated like rocks instead of grains. So it becomes concentrated. So that's Anusmiriti, when it becomes concentrated. And then next stage is Samadhi, spiritual trance, which can also be called Smarana Dasha. But then there's a stage beyond that called Sampati Dasha, beyond Samadhi. And in that stage, you understand your original constitutional position. You know, we did mention how Prabhupada says, as I remember, Narada Bhakti Sutra, that on the level of a Sakti, a devotee realizes their eternal, or at least begins to get the understanding. It becomes clear that, oh, it seems my relationship is such and such. So this is kind of a somewhat different approach, really. Yeah. So at that time he can perfectly and clearly understand his eternal relationship with Krishna. And this, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says, is the perfection of life. So there's one further paragraph, and let's just have a look here. I think what I'll do, I'll just read from about the middle of the paragraph. It's just summarizing everything and bringing out what is Raganuga Bhakti. So please listen. At that stage, well, at what stage? Okay, at the stage of developing a spontaneous attraction. So when one has developed a spontaneous attraction for Krishna, he can spontaneously serve the lotus feet of Krishna without following the regulative principles. This stage is called Raga Bhakti, or devotional service in spontaneous love. At that stage, the devotee can follow in the footsteps of one of the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan. This is called Raganuga Bhakti. Or even, frankly, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. It sometimes is called Raganuga Bhakti, but it's a sadhana practice. So this is called Raganuga Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti, or spontaneous devotional service, can be executed in the Shanta Rasa, when one aspires to be like Krishna's cows, or the stick or flute in the hand of Krishna, or the flowers around Krishna's neck. One aspires to become that. Yeah. The gopis become transcendently envious of the flute. The flute is always tasting the nectar of Krishna's lips, and nobody objects. But it's so hard for us, and our parents object like mad. All right, in the Dasya Rasa, one follows in the footsteps of servants like Chitraka, Patraka, or Raktaka. In the friendly Sakya Ras, well, if that's one's nature eternally, and now one wants to really develop it and learn how to serve Krishna in that way. So in the friendly Sakya Rasa, one can become a friend like Baladev, Sridham, or Sudam. In the Vatsalya Rasa, characterized by parental affection, one can become like Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. And in the Madhurya Rasa, characterized by conjugal love, one can become like Srimati Radharani or her lady friends, such as Lalita and her serving maids, Manjaris, like Rupa and Rati. This is the essence of all instruction in the matter of devotional service. Well, this is the essence of really high level, super high level practice. It's not the essence, of where we're at now. Where we're at now, the essence is chant 16 rounds, follow the principles, do service. And when you're doing these things, try not to do it like a robot. Try not to let your mind just go off while you're doing these things. And try to remember, I'm doing this for Krishna. I'm doing this for my spiritual master. And in that way have a mood of service, of dedicating. I'm chanting my rounds for my purification. Therefore I must chant attentively. But I'm chanting them as a prayer. Radha and Krishna, please engage me in your service. So try to develop that underlying mood while you're chanting. So we're in that sort of stage. We're still working on it. We're trying to get up there, but we got a way to go. But don't worry. If you just carry on serving under Srila Prabhupada and his bona fide representatives, you will come. You will advance. Yes. And you'll come to these higher levels, for sure. Aha. All right, devotees. I think that's about all for this evening. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki.